are on the eve of the largest action in the history of warfare.
It's Normandy.
We all do our jobs. Everything will be fine.
Scared.
We're all scared.
What made you decide to join the paratroopers?
Fire! I wanted to fight with the best, sir.
Tonight, we're gonna have to cross the river.
These crowds are gonna catch some hell. We're gonna have to find another way into Germany.
Easy, you'll head up the mountain through the Ober-Salzburg. Take the Eagle's Nest.
Man, it's been a long war. It's been a tough war. We fought bravely, proudly for your country. We're a special group. We found in one another a bond that exists only in combat.
It's been 2 years since I seen home. 2 years. It's fucking war.
At 0600 hours, we will begin training to go to war.
This is not dog company. This is easy company. The first and finest company in this regiment.
Each trooper will learn this operation by heart and know his mission to the detail.
We're invading Europe, my friend.
All you have to do is remember what you were taught. I guarantee you gravity will take care of the rest.
We are on the eve of the largest action in the history of warfare.
It's Normandy.
We all do our jobs. Everything will be fine.
Scared.
We're all scared.
What made you decide to join the paratroopers?
Fire! I wanted to fight with the best, sir.
Tonight, we're gonna have to cross the river.
These crowds are gonna catch some hell. We're gonna have to find another way into Germany.
Easy, you'll head up the mountain through the Ober-Salzburg. Take the Eagle's Nest.
Man, it's been a long war. It's been a tough war. We fought bravely, proudly for your country. We're a special group. We found in one another a bond that exists only in combat.
It's been 2 years since I seen home. 2 years. It's fucking war.
At 0600 hours, we will begin training to go to war.
This is not dog company. This is easy company. The first and finest company in this regiment.
Each trooper will learn this operation by heart and know his mission to the detail.
We're invading Europe, my friend.
All you have to do is remember what you were taught. I guarantee you gravity will take care of the rest.
We are on the eve of the largest action in the history of warfare.
It's Normandy.
We all do our jobs. Everything will be fine.
Scared.
We're all scared.
What made you decide to join the paratroopers?
Fire! I wanted to fight with the best, sir.
Tonight, we're gonna have to cross the river.
These crowds are gonna catch some hell. We're gonna have to find another way into Germany.
Easy, you'll head up the mountain through the Ober-Salzburg. Take the Eagle's Nest.
Man, it's been a long war. It's been a tough war. We who fought bravely, proudly for your country. We're a special group, found in one another a bond that exists only in combat.
It's been 2 years since I seen home. 2 years. It's fucking war.
At 0600 hours, we will begin training to go to war.
This is not dog company. This is easy company. The first and finest company in this regiment.
Each trooper will learn this operation by heart and know his mission to the detail.
We're invading Europe, my friend.
All you have to do is remember what you were taught. I guarantee you gravity will take care of the rest.
We are on the eve of the largest action in the history of warfare.
It's Normandy.
We all do our jobs. Everything will be fine.
Scared. We're all scared.
What made you decide to join the paratroopers?
Fire!
I wanted to fight with the best, sir.
Tonight, we're gonna have to cross the river.
Those crowds are gonna catch some hell. We're gonna have to find another way into Germany.
Easy, you'll head up the mountain through the Obersalzberg. Take the Eagle's Nest.
Man, it's been a long war, it's been a tough war. We fought bravely, proudly for your country. We're a special group, found in one another a bond that exists only in combat.
Hello everybody, welcome by this live stream about the series The Band of Brothers. On Sunday the 9th of September 2001, HBO aired the first 2 episodes of the Band of Brothers series. And this will be 2 miniseries produced by Tom Hanks and Steven Spielberg that dramatize the real life of the 5 or 6 Parachute Infantry Regiments Easy Company during the Second World War. Production costs totaled about 12 million per episode. That's a lot, which made it also the most expensive TV miniseries ever created at the time and would go on to be regarded as one of the greatest television series ever created. Noted for its powerful recreation of some of the most iconic battlefields of the Second World War. During this amazing live stream and show, we will interview family members of the veterans of the Easy Company, and we have interviews with actors of the series The Band of Brothers, and also some interviews with World War II veterans of the 101st Airborne Division. But first, Reg Jans will start the live show with a short presentation about the Easy Company in Bastogne, and an excited program I think we're going to look forward to. Reg, it is a privilege that you are here again.
Well, thank you very much. It's great being here myself. So as long as you guys still dig me, I'm coming back. And you're right. We're gonna have a tremendous show today. We're gonna talk about the history of Easy Company in Bastogne from the moment they got there till the moment they left, with a lot of personal accounts from the returning veterans, stuff that did never make the cut for the series or that you can't find in any of the books. Plus, we're gonna get some amazing guests. We have some surprise guests as well. So who it will be, you'll see later. But we're going to get started right away and hope you all enjoy it as much as we do.
Yes. Okay. Grab your beer. I have 1 beer. And we're going to listen to all the stories around this series, The Band of Brothers. Enjoy this evening.
Well, hi, everyone. We're going to start out with the Band of Brothers tour, virtual tour in Bastogne. Now, of course, you have to bear in mind, Easy Company was never selected to become the subject of Stephen Ambrose's book because they were much better trained than all the other airborne units. It just happened to be a coincidence of being at the right place at the right time. And this goes back to Walter Gordon, who ran into Stephen Ambrose, who was looking for a new subject for his book. Now, the guys from Easy Company have always wanted to document their company's history. And the guy who was assigned to do it was Mike O'Reilly, who was working as a journalist in the Francisco area. So he had picked up the idea in writing down the company's history, and the working title was Easy Does It. So then when he met Stephen Ambrose, they decided to work together and finish, the story together. But then unfortunately, Mike O'Reilly passed away, and Ambrose picked it up from there and continued interviewing the veterans, going to the reunions, using Dick Winters' archives, and he wrote Band of Brothers, and the rest is history. Now, first of all, you must understand there was just more than one Easy Company in World War II. No, it's just a story about one rifle company, approximately 134, 145 guys out of the 600,000 that were deployed in the Battle of the Bulge. But they do represent all the other veterans that fought here for our freedom. Now, Easy Company that became the subject of Band of Brothers is Easy Company, of course, of the 101st Airborne Division. To understand the structure of the division, I'm going to explain it very shortly. 101st Airborne Division, one division, approximately 12,000 men, that could be broken down in 4 regiments. So in the 101st, you had the 501, 502nd, the 506th, and the 327th Regiment. PIR is Parachute Infantry Regiment. GIR is Glider Infantry Regiment. And the structure is like a corporate structure. It's like the pyramid, okay? Each regiment was broken down in 3 battalions. Every battalion is broken down in 3 rifle companies and a headquarters company. Of course, there's much more to that, but I'm trying to keep it simple. First battalion would be like A, B, C company. Second battalion, Dog Easy Fox company. Third battalion, George H. Owl company. So that means every regiment had that same structure. So which ones are the one depicted in Band of Brothers? Well, that is Easy Company of the 506 Parachute Infantry Regiment. 502nd, 501, they all had an Easy Company, especially also in Bastogne. If you look at the map of the situation in Bastogne, it's the day after Christmas. I just used it because I didn't have a better one available at the moment. But you see in the left corner, you see Field Hospital. The 326 Medical Battalion set up a field hospital there in the early hours of December 19, but it got overrun by a German armored unit that very same day. One of our guests was part of that medical company, and I'm looking forward to hear his story later in the show. So when the 101st Airborne Division arrived in Bastogne, the battles were already raging. The 28th Division had slowed the Germans down. The 10th Armored Division was now holding off the German troops in Neuville to the north, in Longvilly to the east, and to the southeast in Verdun. These combat teams were fighting for time. And if you read their history, it kind of looks like they were sacrificed, to slow down the Germans long enough so the 101st could arrive in Bastogne. Now, when the column arrived from France, Camp Mourmelon-le-Grand, about 114 kilometers from Bastogne, the column arrived at the Barrière Hank, at the crossroads here, where they set up the field hospital. Now, the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, the column had split up, and they moved through the northern route, Givreul to Champs. And here, the little town of Champs is where they detrucked. And that's a scene in the Band of Brothers when Winters is there, and you got Jimmy Fallon, who portrays the supply officer from the 10th Armored Division, George Rice, Tom Rice. And he said, well, sir, I think you're going to be surrounded. When Winters replied, well, we're paratroopers. We're supposed to be surrounded. Now, the 506th Regiment continued his way on foot into Bastogne and made a left turn on the route to Houffalize, the one to the north. This is one of the 7 roads leading into Bastogne. That's why it became such an important objective to the Germans. So that road is also called the N30 as the national road to Neuville. But you can see German tanks were attacking Noville, attacking Major Desabry's 10th Armored Division combat team. This is the situation on December 19, and the paratroops of the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment come walking into Bastogne. Original photos taken on the N30 from Bastogne towards Foix and Noville. As you can see, you got Bastogne. The first little hamlet here, north of Bastogne, is Luz Jr. Then the first town on that N30 is Foix. That's how you pronounce it, ladies and gentlemen. It's not Foy. Erase that from your memory. It's Foix. And the next one is Noville, which is kind of funny, which means no town. I remember that the next day, the Americans had to give Noville up and to the Germans. And one of the veterans from A Company, Mr. Don Brigette, always joked. He said, when we left Noville, there was no Ville, because everything was blown to pieces down there. So 506th moved towards their objective. But you could see the troopers in the photo walking by, some of them wearing a trench coat, some of them wearing their M43 jumpsuits. There's people waving at them. Civilians are actually waving at the paratroopers, but there's this one lady here. She seems to be cleaning her doorstep, or she's hoping anything exciting to happen. If it did, we'll never know. Okay. 1st Battalion, the Green Arrow, was sent directly to Noville in support of the 10th Armored Division. 3rd Battalion, GH&I Company, the Brown Arrow, was sent up to Foix, where it dug in and set up a defense line between the little town of Foix, up the ridge to this railroad line here. That's not a road, that's a railroad track. Easy Company, as part of the 2nd Battalion, moved into Bastogne and moved through Luz Jr. and went straight into a wooded area called the Bois Jacques, where it was put in reserve directly. Now, these guys don't like that, you know. We were not in reserve, we were committed to the battle. Potato, potato. According to the reports, they were in reserve. So what happens the following day on December the 20th? Oh, I forgot something. As you can see, the snow. If you remember that scene of Easy Company walking into Bastogne, arriving in Bastogne, there was snow everywhere. But if you look at the photos, it had been raining the nights before. But there was no snow on the ground yet. That snow came in just before Christmas. Then, the next day, December 20, the Germans are encircling Noville and force Team Desabry and the 1st Battalion to withdraw towards Bastogne. In their withdrawal, the 78th Regiment, 26th Volksgrenadier Division from General Kokot, attacks Foix on the flank and cuts off the withdrawal. Bang, and they take and the town of Foix is held by the Germans for the first time. Hours later, the 3rd Battalion, who was up that ridge south of Foix, southeast of Foix, launched a counterattack. And they retake it for the first time. The town of Foix has changed sides about 3 times. They retake it and they set up a defense line like a bubble around the town of Foix and all the way up to Recogne. So leaving their right flank to the railroad tracks open, unprotected. And that's when 2nd Battalion moves forward on the morning of the 20th of December. And they dug in the front section of the Bois Jacques, overlooking the little town of Foix. So these are the woods. This is an aerial photo taken on December 25, 1944. This is just a segment from a massive high-res air photo. And here you can see the Bois Jacques and the road to Foix on that side, and the road to Bizory to the other side. Now, Bizory, that name, that town still has that name, but when the Americans spent the first 24 hours there in combat, they changed the name into Misery. A little building at the railroad tracks still stands and is called the Hull Station. And the reason for that is that early in September 1944, during the liberation, when troops of the 28th Infantry Division went by that area, they noticed the building and it had a sign against the wall saying halt, which means stop. But these guys first thought it was the name of the town. So later, when they looked at a detailed map, they noticed there was like halt, 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 all along that line. So, but they had a good sense of humor, so they kept referring to this place as Hull Station. It is right here at the railroad tracks that 2nd Battalion dug in. F Company set up a company command post around the building at Hull Station. The rest went in reserve. D Company from behind where now the famous Easy Company Memorial is, all the way up this section of the Bois Jacques, following parallel to the road from Bisbee and Foix. And E Company dug in with 3rd Platoon along the main road under the command of Lieutenant Ed James. 2nd Platoon, like this, the edge of the woods, under Lieutenant Buck Compton, and 1st Platoon on their left flank, overlooking the town of Foix, under Lieutenant Thomas Peacock. Now, Thomas Peacock got a 30-day pass back to the US after General Patton broke the encirclement. It was kind of a reward. Like every company got one pass. That you know the story. They held a raffle. So when Peacock left Bastogne, he was replaced by Ernie Mann to lead the 1st Platoon. Now, Buck Compton was taken off the line on January 4 after he got wounded in Holland. He had really hard times there, like dealing with his feelings, with his stuff. But he did have a case of frostbite, and winners decided to replace him and let him get treated for frostbite and take him off the line. So when Compton left, it was Lieutenant Jack Foley who took over 2nd Platoon. Now later, Ernie Mann suffered from battle fatigue, so Foley was shifted now to 1st Platoon, and 1st Sergeant Carwood Lipton took the command of 2nd Platoon. So this is basically the chain of command in Easy Company after January the 4th. Of course, they were supervised led by Norman Dyke. At that time, I'm going to talk a little bit about him a bit later. Now, you better know these guys, because this is the section of woods. It's kind of the most famous part of Bastogne. That's the part where Joe Toy and Bill Garnier got wounded. Bill is always joking. You know, the last time he was there, I believe it was 2000. It must have been 2005 was the last time that Bill was there. Bill and Babe together. Babe came back in 2007. But, you know, in the first years when he came back, you know, he would always tell the story like, this is where I lost my leg. This is where the war ended for me. But at one time, he was talking there to the group of people that were with him on the tour. And a local guy dropped by with this like 8-9-year-old boy. And they saw like, hey, there's a bus. There's Americans. There's a veteran. So he joined the group hoping he could understand any of the stories. But of course, that little boy couldn't resist staring at Bill's missing leg. And all of a sudden, Garnier turns around and he goes like, what are you looking at? And the boy pointed at his leg. So Bill said, well, you know what? I lost my leg here like 50 some years ago. I give you $5 if you find it. Now that's how typical the person Garnier was on the tour. Babe was an amazing guy to be with. Now, as for Bill Garnier and Babe, why they became so popular is because they're characters. And also the casting of these characters was brilliant, with Robin Lane playing Babe and with Frank John Hughes playing Bill Garnier. And it even went that far that this was, I'm gonna share this quickly with you. It was during the pre-production of Band. It was some sort of a gathering with some actors in a hotel, and some Easy Company veterans were there. And I think possibly Bill wasn't there at that moment. And Frank had learned about that Lipton was one of the first guys on the scene when these guys got wounded. So he walked up to Lipton and he asked him, like, do you remember anything? Like the first thing you saw when you saw Joe and Bill lying there in the woods in Bastogne? Anything specific you remember? And Lipton wrote down his room number and he said, call me in an hour. So about an hour later, Frank called Lipton, and you know, he was not saying much on the other side of the line, but he could hear like Lipton was like hitting the receiver like that. So he asked him like, what is this? What's this all about? And Lipton said, that's the rhythm of how his shredded leg was shaking uncontrollably. So when they were going to film that scene, Frank went up to the special effects guys and he asked them if they could wire his leg and put some electrodes on his leg and with a remote so he could send pulses, electricity pulses. So in one of the last scenes before they changed to another scene, he's sitting straight up and his leg is shaking and he holds his hand behind him and he's actually operating the remote, giving himself electroshocks. So you can see how far they went to make it as accurate as possible. Of course, Easy Company, you can't talk about Easy Company about Dick Winters, who at that time had moved up the ladder since the actions on the dikes in the Netherlands. He became an assistant to Colonel Strayer at battalions. Later, Moose Heiliger took over the company. He got wounded by friendly fire, and that's when Norman Dyke had to take over the command of Easy Company. He had already distinguished himself for earlier actions, but he was more like a desk guy. Okay, he had good connection. He was kind of liaison between the regiment and the division. He had good connections up there. The only thing he had to do was bring the boys home. But all of a sudden, the Battle of the Bulge begins, and there he is in a field leading a rifle company. So not quite what he expected. The boy Jacques again. You see the line that I drew is the line of 3rd platoon. So Foy is to the left, Misery or Misery is to the right. And you see just north of the line, you see a clearing, 1, 2, 3 clearings. If you go there nowadays, this is all wooded area. The area has changed because of the ongoing tree farming programs that they run there. So now you have woods that were fields, there's fields that were woods during the war, so it has changed a lot. But this is very important if when you talk or study the story that I'm going to tell you right now, because to cover this clearing, because the enemy was just across the woods across the street, Smokey Gordon had set up his machine gun right there with his assistant gunner Frank Mallet to cover the clearing. Now on December 24 was the first day of the heavy snow, and in the morning it was still quite these calm moments when Smokey had made him a cup of coffee or tea. And he got hit by a sniper. The bullet entered his shoulder, missed his spine by this, left his other shoulder like that, and he kind of dropped like a potato bag. Mallet immediately takes over the machine gun and he is evacuated. And that's a scene when he's lying there. Remember, Lipton is helping him out. Doc Rowe is giving him a shot of plasma, and he opens his eyes and goes, "I said, Lip, get off my hand." And that's the story. Gordon survived, luckily, underwent surgery. Mallet would later be killed during the attack on Foy. Now, what happened, and that didn't make the cut for the series, is what happened next. Because to their right, 3 other guys were dug in: Shifty Powers, Earl McClung, and Buck Taylor. And they saw their buddy being hit. So they went out and looked for that sniper. So the 3 of these guys crossed the Foy-Bizery road into the woods. They found the sniper. They shot him, killed him, checked his body if he was really dead, and then came running back through the snow. What I didn't know is that there was a second German there who suddenly jumped up from a foxhole behind him in order to shoot him from behind. But the bolt of his rifle jammed, and McClung said, "I turned around and I fired my M1 from the hip, and I hit him right there." So he dropped his gun and reached for his chest, and that's when I fired a second round. And I could see him fall over like this, like bang down. He said, "I ran down there to see if he was dead, to check if he was dead. When I rolled him over, I noticed he had a hole in each of his hands." So apparently, he said, that second round that he fired, still running backwards, had hit him on the exact same spot as the first round had hit him. So the 3 guys then crossed the road and returned back to their foxholes. Now, of course, why did they fire at Gordon? Because later that day, they launched an attack, a frontal attack onto Easy Company and F Company's positions. And it was kind of the size of a company coming out of the woods. McClung always remembered you could see half-tracks emerging from the woods, infantry emerging from the woods, and that's where the shooting begins. It's a very nice scene. It's very well done in the series. but the attack came through the clearing right here. So by neutralizing the machine gun, shooting Gordon, that would make it easier for them to launch the attack. Okay, which luckily E Company made an amazing stand, holding them off. Now on the 2nd of January, the whole battalion, that means D, E, and F Company, they kind of switched positions a little bit when they crossed the road, had to cross the road to clear the woods north of that road, which they called the 1,000-yard advance, because their objective was a dirt road about 1,000 meters to the north. Reason for that, this was all part of a big operation because the ground troops were now attacking on the N30 in order to get to New Houffalize in the north. So they had to clean the high ground on the right flank, on the eastern flank. Now, when that happened, the Germans sent reinforcements down to Bastogne, like the 12th SS Hitlerjugend Division. And because of these German reinforcements, these guys had to pull back to their original positions on the following day. So the fighting that happened in there was for nothing. But they didn't have many casualties themselves, except for one guy, Corporal Donald Hubler. That night, up in the lines, way to the north into the woods, they spent the night down there. And Hoop had shot a German earlier that day. I'm not sure. I don't know if it was from a horse or not. But he did shoot a German, and he was actually going from foxhole to foxhole, showing off about how he shot that German. And Bob Rader was on guard duty, and he was in one of his foxholes. And Rader said it was so bloody cold that night that my eyes had frozen open at that moment. But Hoop was like, "Hey man, I saw the German and I shot him." And he was standing there talking, telling his story, and he had his hand in his pocket. He was playing with his sort of a World War I type of pistol. Now, it was not a Luger that he picked up from the Germans. Hoop already had that gun on him. He got it from Holland. The attack on the dikes on October 5th, October 6th. Remember when Winters runs up the dike, shoots the kid, the corner's full of Germans. Well, after that shootout, he got that gun from a German. I don't know if it was a dead German or a German prisoner. I don't know. But he had it in his pocket. There was no safety on that gun. And he received some snow from the trees on his shoulders. So he was shredding his shoulders like that. And he must have hit the trigger, but the gun goes off. And the bullet went straight to his main artery. So the tragical death of Corporal Donald Hubler happened in that area. You see Peter McCabe proudly presenting his Luger. Well, erase that from your memory. Then is the story of John Julian, who got hit on a patrol, shot in the neck. That's another story. I don't have time to tell the entire story and the little bit of conflicting stories that come with it. But that happened approximately in the area I have encircled here to your right. So if you ever walk along the railroad tracks, which is now a cycling path, like a bike path, and where the original tree line begins, it's about like 250 meters. That's the area where Julian was hit. Now, here we got the Bois Jacques at the bottom. You can recognize it. This is a more recent photo, of course. Now, on the 4th of January, that's when the platoon leaders had switched, positions. Lipton was now in charge of 2nd platoon. Foley was in charge of 1st platoon. E Company, well, the whole battalion moved across the N30 into the woods, which are called the Bois Champagne, just south of the town of Recogne. And that's where they went into reserve for 5 days. It's behind the lines of 3rd Battalion that was dug in there. And 3rd Battalion was dug in south of Recogne. You see where the tree line is. However, that has changed too. Now, after spending 5 days in reserve, doing some recons, patrolling, and being shelled at mostly, the whole battalion was sent out in a diversionary attack. Because on the 9th of January, elements of the 501st Regiment attacked the town of Recogne, coming from the woods. And the 3rd Battalion had attacked through Le Bois Fazon, which are the Fazon woods, on the 9th of January. Now, at the other side of these woods in the town of Vaux, German artillery had just arrived, German tanks had just arrived, and they literally shelled these woods when they knew the Americans were launching an attack through it. They shelled it for 24 hours. And this is where they suffered hell's night. And it was so intense. That shelling was so intense. I was told by a radio, like a guy from communications section of the 3rd Battalion, he said after that these barrages, there wasn't a single radio bearer that still had an antenna on his radio. It's all blown off. So the following day, on the 10th of January, they received the order to return to their reserved positions. Now it's on that day that 2 mortar guys, Muck and Penkala, receive a direct hit in their foxhole. We're going to talk a little bit about them later on. So the thing is that happened on the 10th of January. What we don't know is, was it like when they were still up there in the woods on their way back, or right before they got back, or was it after they got back and did the shell hit them right there? So that's something we can't tell, because on the reports it's not a specific hour like this happened. I remember talking to some of the veterans that say, yeah, it must have been in the middle of the night because it was dark. Well, in January, at that period, it gets dark by 4:35 p.m. So that could have been late afternoon as well. So that's still the question: where exactly were they when they were hit? Was it still up there in the Fazone woods or here south of Reconia? The brown line, 3rd Battalion, right here, and I have drawn the line not here where the trees are, because which is a dirt road, La Route de Madame, that's what it's called, that little private road, but they were dug in front of that. Why? Because the area has changed. All the woods on the other side of that line have been cut back in the 70s to have more space for cattle, for the cows. And as you can see in the aerial photo to our left, right here, this is that road, La Route de Madame, and you see there's a patch of trees and a big, like a wood stretching out towards Foix, right here. That has all been changed, and that also explains why Major Winters, when he was on his last visit to Bastogne, that he got a little bit confused when we talk about the attack on Foix, because he didn't recognize it. He said it wasn't from a dirt road. We attacked from a tree line. And I could look straight into the town of Foix. 2 things he couldn't see while standing here, because the trees were gone, because the tree line was way up there. So he figured that it must have been over here then. So in one of the maps he has in the book Band of Brothers, he draws the arrow of the attack on Foix, starting from here, crossing the N30 and going down into Foix that way. While in fact the attack started from up here. But you know, it's Winters. He's a great commander, but he's also human, and humans make mistakes, especially 60 years after the war. So this is basically what it looked like. So the trees that are gone now, I have given a little green with green stripes. So this is to scale. This is to hand, not to scale. So you can see the positions of 3rd Battalion just south of Foix. So you got H Company right here, I Company, and G Company to the left. Funny thing to know is here in the lines where H Company was, there was a little pillbox, a little bunker from the Vest line, built in 1933, 1934, that they used as the officers' club. One of the guys in H Company was Cecil Sick, and he said that they had set up an observation post in a building along the N30, which is this building where the arrow is right here now, and it's the building you see in the photo here. It has been rebuilt right now, because you can see it's suffered a lot of damage. And he said we set up a listening observation post, so at night we would go down there, observe the Germans were holding Foix, because on the 26th of December the Germans had retaken it, and in the morning we would come back to our foxholes. But he said one evening, when we went down there, we saw like a bunch of Germans like sneaking around the building. So he said we attacked them and we killed all 5 of them. We went inside because it was bloody cold. We did our job, and in the morning when we returned to the foxholes, we noticed one of these Germans was still lying there at the entrance of the farm. But he'd been lying there all night long like this, all stretched out in the cold. And he said we tried to search him if he was carrying any important information. So when we rolled him over, his frozen arm came up like that. So the following days, every time when we went back to that observation post and we saw him, we shook his hand. And he said, we just did that to remind ourselves that how bad our situation was out there in Bastogne, it was still much better than his. Now the attack on Foix. Now I'm going to keep this really short. The attack on Foix did not start from the Bois-Jacques at all, because they had left the Bois-Jacques on January 4, and they would never return to that area again. They went into reserve, then came back and launched the attack a bit parallel to the N30 on both sides of the road. Ed Shames's 3rd platoon crossed the road here, and Shames always said, I was the first one down into Foy. And then another guy would say, yeah, that's because you were the diversion, Mr. Shames. And then 1st and 2nd platoon under Lipton and under Jack Foley attacked from the tree line up here. Normally, they would get support by the 81mm mortar team who had set up their tubes in the field, the open field behind the woods right here. Now, out there at the tree line, Pete Madden, who was an observer of the 81mm mortar platoon, he gets 5 minutes for the attack, call on his radio. And a voice in perfectly English says, well, hold fire, mortar support not necessary, abandon mission. So Madden said, what? I knew Colonel Patch's radio guy, but I didn't recognize his voice. So I said, please repeat. And he said the same thing. So I asked him to identify, and he hung up. So he sent a runner back to see what was going, and hold fire, don't fire the mortars. At that time, Shames takes his men across the road, and the guys launch the attack into Foix through knee-deep snow, and hell breaks loose. There were much more Germans than they thought. There was a tank hidden in the dip in the road, and they were like pinned down almost immediately. So when that runner met Colonel Patch asked him, like, why are you not firing the mortars? And he said, well, you just called us to hold fire. And he said, we never called you. So apparently the Germans had found a way. It's a long story, which I can tell easily on the tour, but we were short in time. So Sink immediately orders like a 48-hour radio silence. So all the communications between the platoons was broken because he knew the Germans were listening. And that's the bit where then suddenly Lieutenant Dyke, has reached his line, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's typically human, somebody's line is here, and then you break, somebody's line is over there. But he didn't get the promised mortar support in the first 10 minutes. And all of a sudden, he loses every form of communication. He couldn't call the guys up there. He couldn't call the other platoons. So he started panicking, and that's when Lipton took over. So phase 2 begins of the attack. An hour later, they send an I Company along the road going this way. Now, I Company at that moment was down to 22 guys out of 140 they arrived with in Bastogne like 1 week earlier. At that moment, Colonel Sink had already his entire 3rd platoon wiped out. And they attacked down that road into the center. And when they reached the first buildings, they noticed that the Germans had booby-trapped the road, and there's a tank parked in the center of the town, firing at him point blank, holding him at gunpoint. Now, with them, with I Company, Colonel Sink sends down Captain Eugene Brown as the extra officer, because at that moment, I Company was down to just one senior officer, and that was Roger Tinsley, who had just joined the company before Bastogne. And Captain Brown was sent down there with a radio to give him a status report for what was going on, what they needed, if they needed more firepower. So Brown was on the radio talking, giving instructions, giving positions of the German machine guns. So up there at the tree line, Winners and the guys and Patch and Colonel Sink knew what to do, and they needed reinforcements on the double because the Germans listening had plenty of time to prepare for an attack. So they were ready. They were waiting for them to come. So Captain Brown was sent down. He briefs from the building. He briefs Colonel Sink. He tells them what they need. We need the heavy weapons. We need reinforcements now. And then he hangs up the phone and he runs outside, and he sees behind the hedgerow, which is probably, you see the arrow here to the left. This is the route of Captain Gene Brown, and the other one is of Lieutenant Tinsley on both sides of the roads. Tinsley trying to contact Shames in 3rd platoon, and Captain Brown trying to contact here 2nd platoon Lipton. But when he reaches the hedgerow right here, he noticed like a ginger guy from Oregon sitting behind the hedgerow, like playing with his with his mortar. And Brown goes like, "Malarkey, is that you?" So Brown and Malarkey went to the University of Oregon together, and they joined the army together. And of course, Brown, he went for the officers' training. Malarkey just, to do his time in the airborne troops. And it was one day at I think it was in Toccoa or Camp McCall, can't remember exactly. When they actually going out in the evening, they met again after like months of training. And Malarkey was like, "Hey, Eugene, hey, how are you doing?" And Captain Brown, who was with other officers, he kind of ignored him, goes like, so Malarkey goes, "Why are you doing that?" So a couple of weeks later, kind of the same situation, they're kind of crossing each other. Brown, again, in a company of like officers. And Malarkey goes like, "Hello, Gene. Hello, Gene." And Brown walks up to Malarkey. He says, "Okay, can I talk to you for a moment?" He says, "Listen, you're a private. I'm an officer. I'm working on my career. I'm climbing the ladder. I'm here with fellow officers. So don't embarrass me. So the next time you see me, I want you to salute me, call me with my rank and my name. You get that?" And Malarkey was like, yeah. So now suddenly they're like 10,000s of miles away from home in the middle of an attack in the dead of the winter. And Brown busts out of the building and he sees Malarkey at the hedgerow. He goes, "Okay, Malarkey, is that you?" And Malarkey looks up and goes like, "Hello, Gene." So that's also kind of a hilarious story that always stuck with me when they told that. So I love it. The German tank in Foix. So phase 3 of the attack, the reinforcements that were sent down into Foix. It's very detailed. Unfortunately, I don't have the time to go really into the details of what happened, like phase by phase. But these are the heavy weapons. I Company was sent in. What was left of H Company was sent in support of the attack. And one guy was sent down there as part of that, what we call a relief group, to take over from Lieutenant Norman Dyke. And of course, you know that person. That's this scene, what happens. So he was not on his own. He, at 11 p.m., 2 hours after he started attack, he was part of that relief group. But he had the orders to lead 1st and 2nd platoon into the town of Foix. And once they got to the buildings, now they had enough firepower, got to the buildings and start clearing the buildings. And so by 3:30 in the afternoon, they had established like a defense line just north of the little town of Foix, which means after 6.5 hours of battle. But that Easy Company was pulled out of the attack, but that battle continued because now the Germans started pushing back, like throwing punches, sending infantry and artillery. Infantry even made it back into Foix, so F Company pushed them out again, and that went back and forth until like 3 a.m. the next morning, when the tanks of the 11th Armored Division came rolling in from Bastogne to take over. So this whole final battle for Foix lasted for nearly 18 hours. E Company's involvement, 6.5 hours. There he is, Ronnie Spears. So the story of him running through the village or not. The thing is that Spears brings his guys, you see the arrow here, 1st and 2nd platoon, into the town, shooting their way into Foix that way. Meanwhile, Rog Tinsley is on the other side, shooting his way in this way. So no communication between the platoons because of the radio silence, and they actually are getting into each other's crossfire. So Spears, according to the memory of Carl Lipton, Spears actually did make that run, crossed the road pretty close to the church, and he ran into a little alley behind the old schoolhouse, which is now somewhere else. It's not there anymore. It's been rebuilt. And that's where he spoke to Tinsley, briefly saying, like, "Stop shooting at us." And he turned around and ran back from east to west, back across the road of Foix. So that's quite a true story. Unfortunately, shortly thereafter, Rog Tinsley gets mortally wounded in the head and in the chest. He's evacuated by Freddie Balo and his friends from H Company, but then he passed away later that day or the following day, leaving I Company with no senior officer. Foix, some images of Foix for those who have been there already. It still looks like that, by the way. Well, it's not. The buildings have been rebuilt, of course. It's not like shot to pieces anymore, but it has been rebuilt. But if you go look for where these photos were taken, you can easily recognize this place near the church. The church is still standing. This is the tank that was knocked out by Al Capelli from I Company during that attack on Foix on the 13th. The chapel is still there. So then, of course, the story of Shifty Powers. You saw on the map that James was pinned down on the eastern flank of Foix. Well, from the window that you see in the right upper corner right here, a German was aiming at everyone coming down that road from basically that had our point of view towards Foix, was being shot at from that window. So basically Shifty, when he was there in 2002, he pointed to that window. He said that that's where I shot him from. So when you look at the series, it basically looks like they're at the tank that you just saw in the photo, and then the shot rings and they all run towards the church and they fire. So the angle is all incorrect. Plus, you don't do that. Shifty said, you don't go out partying in the middle of the open before every single building is secured. So that was kind of a bit of a crappy scene. You know how they portrayed it. He said that's the window where I shot the sniper in. Now, was it really a sniper? You know, to every American, every German in the window is a sniper, but that does not mean that it's like a trained sniper with a sniper rifle put in there to snipe. You know, they're shooting back at you. To the left, you see Captain Dale die back in 2016. From the corner, the real Shifty was at. Here you see Peter Youngblood Hills, one of our guests of the show today, in that scene, shooting at that window. And Captain Dye is reenacting that scene right now. Noville or Noville. You can see now where what Don Burgett meant by when we left there was Noville, because it's completely shot to pieces by the bombardments. Nowadays, a new church is standing here, but the building that you see here on the right photo, that's the old presbytery, which was standing. If you look at the church today, it was standing left of the church, but it was never rebuilt after the war. Instead, they built the road up to Bourcy. So now there's a road, like a one driving lane, where that presbytery used to be. Now, after the attack on Foix, E Company was moved up to Noville, which was now being attacked again by 1st Battalion, who launched the attack with support this time, with air support, with tank destroyer support, and all the stuff that you need, artillery that you need to do. Easy Company had to take took a little part in that battle. It was a heavy battle because guys got seriously wounded by big German artillery rounds, by Nebelwerfer, screaming mimes. But after that battle was over, Easy Company set up that sort of a base camp in a farmhouse behind the church. And it's right there that Ed Shames, Lieutenant Shames and Jim Alley heard through the radio, like, okay, that the radio silence was restored, saying like, okay, there's friendly tanks coming from Bastogne. So they walked, and while doing that, forgetting to bring their rifles, they walked down the road by the presbytery up to the main road here. You see all the knocked out vehicles, and they start walking towards Bastogne, which is southeast, this way, looking if they could see any tanks. At the same time, they run into Carwood Lipton, who is coming from the opposite direction. And he said, have you heard the news? There's tanks on the way. So all the three guys are looking towards Bastogne, like along the N30, and suddenly they noticed there's a tank parked between two of the buildings, just a little bit, maybe 200 yards further away. But it was like getting dark, or still the fog was setting in, and the tank commander was sticking out of the tank. So these guys start running towards the tank, like waving, "Hey, you! It's us! It's us!" So the tank guy sees them. He drops down in the tank backs up, and at that moment they noticed a big black cross on the flank of that tank. So Ali and James, they kind of reached for their rifle, realizing they forgot it back at the farm. So the three of them turn around and start sprinting down the road into Noville. And Lipton dove straight under that knocked out tank that you see here, like head first, like under it. And Ali and James went for like a 6 feet wall that was built around the presbytery. There's a wall that you see in this photo and the wall that you see in that photo. James got over that wall first, and he saw the open window, and he kind of dives in there head first, and he lands in like a stretcher without a mattress, and he gets completely caught up in the springs of the stretcher. And Ali drops himself down on the other side of the wall, and at that time, the German tank fires 2 rounds, one on the tank, and Lipton said, probably a little bit exaggerated, but he said he could feel the tank was being lifted off the ground and back up by the impact of the shell. And then he fired a second round at Jim Alley, blowing like a big piece out of that wall, which you can still see right here. Then the tank continued its way in front of that Sherman tank. It made a right turn up to Pourcy. So Lipton now comes crawling from underneath that tank. Shames comes climbing, like they had to help him out of that stretcher, like he's kind of stuck in these springs. And Alley gets back like with all the dust on, and they run up the main road to see where the tank was going. And when it was reaching the highest point of the road, they could hear the sound of a P-47 coming from the direction of Bastogne, diving towards its target, and that one knocked out the tank. So some of the guys got wounded, but this is probably the most funny and exciting story related to these guys in Noville. So there's Lipton's tank. There is the arrow in the wall, and that's at James's escape room. So after the Battle of Foix, they moved on to Rachan, and they said they spent some time in a convent, a nunnery, which in fact wasn't a nunnery, it was the schoolhouse of Rachan. But you see the ornament of Jesus, it says a Catholic center. The teachers were nuns back then. So if you see this building and you see the nuns, you think it was a convent, but it was the schoolhouse. This was the first time they were fed inside, and they got could shave themselves, warm themselves up a little bit. The nuns made them food, which was like boiled water with cabbage, bacon, and potatoes. It's a typical World War II meal. Someone told me it's a typical Irish meal. I don't know. And that's when the mind starts working normal again. So they had to start processing everything they've been through, and that's what they want to say with that scene where they're sitting in the church on the benches, and all the guys who were there, they disappear. So that's a very powerful scene. There's more details about that, but maybe next time when we meet in Bastogne. The place in Rachan, the schoolhouse, is still there. It's still a school. Well, the right part is still a school for all the children of the town, all 3 of them, I guess. It's still there. And that's basically the place also where Lipton got his, according to the series, not really happened there, but that he got his promotion to second lieutenant for being the glue that held the company together. Also in Rachan, they did manage, they had to clear the buildings, they had air support, driving the Germans out of there, clearing the buildings, but they did capture several German officers, and they were guarded by Joe Leibgut and Earl Hale, when suddenly, like a shell exploded, or Hale or Leibgut kind of fell down or stumbled over something, tweaked his ankle, whatever. I can't remember that, but at that moment, one of the Germans pulled a knife and jumped up to Earl Hale and slit his throat. So Leibgut got up, and with his Thompson submachine gun, he shot them all. So Hale was lucky that it was just a flesh wound, so no specific arteries were cut at the time. And there, so he survived. So all good and well for the guys in Rachan. Now there's a nice monument dedicated to Easy Company, and it's a tree that was planted there on September 21, 2002, by the children of the village and 2 veterans of Easy Company, Wild Bill Garnier and Babe Heffern. Of course, then there's a story I briefly going to mention. René Lemaire and Eugene Rowe. To disappoint the fans, I'm very, very sorry, but they never met in person. Her story was known to the people in Bastogne, and the one Ambrose mentions her in the foreword. She's not really a character in the book, but then when they were doing the making of the series, the writers really wanted to bring her in as a female character, so they had to find a connection with Easy Company. So she was working in the aid station of the 10th Armored Division, treating guys from the 20th Armored Infantry Battalion on the other side of Bastogne. So they moved her to the 101st Aid Station, which was the church, the seminary, not the main church, but just about 100 meters across the road from the main church was a chapel of the seminary school, and that's where the aid station was. They made Rowe go back and forward collecting stuff, which was actually done by Paul Miller, who was the chief surgical technician. And his task was to supply all the medics on the front line. So they took his story, gave it to Rowe, let him go back and forth after having moved Renee from one aid station to the other one. That's how they wrote her into the story. Now, she was killed during the attack, during the air bombings on Christmas Day, which was another nurse, Augusta Shiwi. She survived the bombing. She passed away about 5-6 years ago at the age of 94. So both helped. Both were from Bastogne. Renee was working in Brussels because she was here to visit her family. And she had kept a piece of the parachute from the supply drops because she wanted to make a wedding dress out of it. Now, John Pryor was a medic who found her body, and he wrapped her into the parachute and carried her back to her parents' house, which was a hardware store at the main square in Bastogne, which is today the Pizzeria Georgie. So that's her elderly home. This is her grave, and this is 2014. And this is the very first time that anyone from the Rowe family visited Renee's grave. So this is the first time Rowe and Lemaire connected, because their names will be connected forever because of the series Band of Brothers. They never met in person, but this is the first time there was a connection. And it was, I must say, it was a really special one. Now, this is the building, just not that far away from the main square in Bastogne, where the aid station was, where Renee was killed. And you see people looking for survivors. Now it's been rebuilt, and it's a Chinese restaurant right now. So, and that's kind of a crazy story, but this guy, Chris Langlois, a relative of Eugene Rowe, visited Bastogne the first time in 2014. I had fixed the hotel for him at the main square, and he arrived on his own by train downtown Bastogne and tried to find his way to the hotel. He took the wrong turn, and instead of taking the shortest route, he walked all around the block to the main square, which is quite a detour. Well, not that bad, but it's not the shortest way. So the following day, I picked him up to start our battle tour, and I said, I'm going to show him where Renee was killed. So he might have been interested because of the relation with his grandfather and stuff. So I took him to that Chinese restaurant, and I was like very proud, like ta-da! This is the place. And I looked at Chris, and his face had turned like all pale, and he looked at me, and he said, "This is where I had dinner last night." And he had no idea what that place was. He said, "I noticed it when I was looking for my hotel last night." Now, out of the 100 places he could have chosen, he chose that place. He chose that place. And this was a very, very, very weird story. But we're happy. We're happy today because we're going to have Chris on as our guest today. Coming next is going to be this very, very nice fellow, George Luz Jr., talking about their fathers and grandfathers. After that, we're going to have these guys joining us. Peter Youngblood Hills, or Darrell Powers in the series, and Matthew Leitch, who portrayed Floyd Talbert, are going to join us. But not just that, because we're going to have some really amazing extra guests. Well, hope you enjoyed it. Joel, back to you.
Reg, amazing presentation. Thank you. I think I see a lot of comments coming in on Facebook. People are really enthusiastic about your story. Thanks, Reg. And we have still an exciting program ahead for us. We're now going to look at an impressive video of Europe Remembers, one of my tours. I'm touring all the way up through Europe, starting in the UK. Now I have a little bit of a stop because of COVID-19. We're going hopefully in July to Berlin. And we're going to, during this tour, making short videos, about 10 minutes, of the places we visit. This is a short clip. You can find all the videos of our tour with our van up on the YouTube channel Liberation Route Europe. And this is an interview with Chris and the actors of Band of Brothers in the forest at Bastogne. And we will be right back with you with interviews of Joël Luz and Chris Langlois about their father and grandfather. We'll be right back.
We're now Bourjac Woods, and during the Battle of the Bulge around Bastogne, the 101st Airborne Division, the Easy Company, held their ground here in this forest.
So here we're in the foxholes. Can you tell us the function of this place?
This is a foxhole, protected for shelling, because the Germans also shelled that place with 88 grenades. So yeah, this is only your protection. And it was terrible weather, winter. Yeah, brutal conditions for the man of the Easy Company, and also famous from the series The Band of Brothers. How was it for you to be here, Shane Taylor?
Well, very humbled, very honoured. I've been to Bastogne a few times, and the Bojac in particular, and there's always a great atmosphere to the place, and there's a real connection every time that we kind of come to here.
And how was it for you to be here as an actor of the Band of Brothers?
Cold.
Yeah.
No, that's exactly what Shane says. It's we're getting the genuine experience now with the cold and the rain and the snow, and we're here for like 30 minutes, then we're going to go back inside again, you know. And these guys were here for a long time in the snow with 88 shells firing in. So, yes, it's very humbling, and yeah, a little bit scary if you can imagine these things exploding all around you.
Your grandfather fought here, or was a medic here, so it's special.
It's very special. My grandfather was Doc Rowe, at this point he was the only medic that had made it from D-Day. The other medics were replacements, so he would have been the only medic that had been with the company just after Toccoa, had made the jump on D-Day and been through Holland, and now was here and was the senior medic for the guys.
And did your father or the grandfather also tell you stories, or did you hear stories?
No, he didn't. He wouldn't talk. There was a few happy stories that he would tell, but nothing of the bad, nothing of what he saw and endured, like so many of those men.
And how was it for you to see the episode of the Band of Brothers? Because your portrait of your father was in.
You know, it was tough. You know, there's one part where Rowe is in a foxhole and they're being shelled, and I think it was Lipton who's calling, you know, medic, Rowe, and Shane's there and he's not moving, and I thought they're showing him as a coward, and so I was very hurt, and I went back and watched it again, and I listened to other people, and they said that's not what they showed at all. They showed him being human and being afraid, but yet jumping up and going, which is the true sign of courage. Courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is action in spite of fear. And so I think it really showed the humanity that these men had to endure. They were scared and they were cold and they were wet and they were tired, but still they got up and fought, and that's the heroics of it.
We now Bojac Woods.
Welcome back, everybody. After this impressive video I made in Bastogne, we are now here with George and Chris. Chris is at work, I see. Chris, welcome. George, welcome to this impressive live stream.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, all the banks in Dallas are being robbed right now. So
yeah, there's a lot of people speeding in this town getting away with it, I can tell you right now.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you, Reg and Joel.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, good to see you guys. Chris, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time, because I know you're at work, so you can spend like all of you're being paid right now. You're the only one who's being paid right now because you're working.
Tell the city that.
So, George, good to see you.
Hey, that was great, Reg. I really enjoyed that.
Oh,
well, I hope so. I hope I enjoyed doing it. Well, I did prepare some extra questions because they gave me like 30 minutes for the presentation, which I exceeded. So it's like I did an hour. So here go the questions. Like
went by like that.
Yeah, just like that. Now, Chris, your relationship with E Company is your grandfather, right?
Correct.
Who was your grandfather?
So Doc Rowe was my grandfather. That was my mom's dad.
Okay, and did he ever talk about his time in World War II, or was he more like quiet about it?
He was quiet about it, like most of those guys. I never talked to him about the war, and the only little bits that he talked about to my mom and my aunt and uncle were just a couple of quick stories, and they were all very, non-bad stories for the most part. Story of driving trucks, in Birch's Garden or the Eagle's Nest when they got all of Garing's alcohol and it was distributed among the different companies. He drove one of those trucks, so that was kind of a story. He did tell one story, now that I think about it, of one of the troopers getting there, and he said he got his head blown off, and he showed my aunt, he was holding his skull, and I wonder if that was Grant. So it could have been any of them, but we know that's a story for Grant. So that's really the only bad story. So he didn't talk much about it.
Yeah. So, which is kind of strange because he must have let an impression on some of the guys who've watched him and who've talked to him, because apparently he was not just the average guy. Or he was a medic. Okay, he served as a medic. Now, did he choose? Do you know if he chose to become a medic, or was he just like you?
I don't know.
You don't know.
Doc Pepping filled out a survey when he joined up, and one of the questions was, "Do you think you could kill a man?" And he said no, and that's how he became a medic. But Doc Spina said, "They made me a medic. I didn't have a choice in it." So it could have been one of the two ways. We'll never know.
Yeah. All right. Now, George. No, your father, the late George Luz, he went to kind of a lot of post-war reunions, right? He was very involved in organizing or being there with his comrades. Did he talk a lot about Easy Company or about the war?
Oh yeah, quite a bit. Yeah, I guess I was one of the fortunate ones. He shared a lot of stories with me. Good stories, bad stories, crazy stories, ugly stories, funny stories. I wish I would have had the technology today that I could have used way back when.
Yeah.
But yeah, he did share a lot of stuff with me. And, the reunions were a very integral part of his life after the war. And, my mom recognized that. So that was something that was, it may not have been every year, but it was almost every year they went.
Yeah. Wow. So now, unfortunately, your dad never got to see the series, right? But he must have read the book, Ambrose's book. And did he contribute to the book in any way, or?
Well, my sister's the one that deserves a lot of credit when it comes to the book, because Lana, what had happened was she was pestering Dad to make sure he filled out the necessary questionnaire. And, my dad just felt as though, hey, I'll get in there somehow. It's really not a big deal. We all were there shoulder to shoulder. But so she deserves the credit to kind of sit down with Dad and say, let's just get this thing done. And they did. So, there was a certain amount in the book. And, hey, when you're the funny guy, it's just the way it goes.
Yeah. So which part did he like to talk about the most? Was it I bet it must have been the Normandy part, maybe.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Some of the Normandy stuff is the things I remember. And then, Bastogne, the story in Bastogne, a tough one as well. And, but just the funny stories with the guys. And, after the war too, the closeness, what they shared during World War II, and then carried over after the war.
Yeah.
And George, what do you can remember about the first time you saw the Band of Brothers series?
Well, it was really it was humbling to think, when you see something like that and you see your dad's involved, it's humbling to think that there was, 16 million American men and women that served our country. And so to think that my dad was one of those and, played a role to a degree that, they made a movie about his unit. They wrote the book and then made a movie about him, and that he was in there quite often. So it was humbling, honorable, and all that stuff. And I think the main thing my dad would have taken from the series was that other guys got a chance to maybe tell their story. I'm sure sons or daughters or grandsons or nieces and nephews looked at some of their uncles and fathers and grandfathers and said, geez, I wonder what they did in the war. And I'm sure that's what he would have thought of. It would have provided all the rest of the guys a chance to tell their story.
Yeah. So he loved to talk about it, George. And you have sent us an audio file that you got with a recording from your dad when he was talking at one of the reunions, I guess.
Yeah, actually, it was the book opening. It was the book opening. Yeah, it was the book opening in 1992, and my dad is describing prior to the jump into Normandy. Yeah. And it was done in 1992, and there were 19 guys from the unit there, including Major Winters. Yeah. And about halfway through the clip, Dick interrupts my dad. So there's a little bit of back and forth there. It's kind of humorous. And so let it roll. And
we got the clip. You can hear Major Winters talking to him. There's a subtitle. You have to listen carefully. It's like a very short clip. For those you know, Luz, before when boarding the plane for Normandy, actually traded places with another guy that possibly may have saved his life at one point. Done though, so I'm check it out where it is. And
I heard it yesterday. What an amazing clip.
Here we go.
Yes. Yeah, here. Yeah.
I have to do it again because I share sound. So there you go.
Yeah.
Look at me, with a leg pack that weighed about 150 pounds. I lost mine too. So anyway, number 18 man gets in first, 17, 16, and Lieutenant Wells was left behind me. And it took two guys from the Air Corps to pick me up into that plane. Before I go on, he mentioned a guy named Cobb.
George.
What's that again? Don't get me any older. You're not behind me. We're all lined up. And I'm fifth man in the stick. Fifth. I said to Lieutenant Welch, I'll never make the door. He said, well, change with Cobb. And you just heard what happened to Cobb. He got shot in the room, but he was trapped in the room.
So anyway, yeah, that was kind of funny. But now, if you remember in episode 4, when Cobb was railing on, Private Miller, James Miller, who was wearing the one of the replacements, and he was wearing the Presidential Unit Citation ribbon. And Randleman stepped up to Cobb and said, "Hey, you didn't jump into Normandy neither." And that's the reason he didn't jump in, was because they switched him with my father. So.
Okay, that's funny to start. Now, Chris, for you, in a write-up about the attack on Foix that I just had in my presentation, it was Don Malarkey who described how Rowe, your grandfather, like while dodging bullets, ran across the open field from one wounded guy to the other wounded guy, never taking any cover. Now, was that the kind of guy that he was, or was it that situation that triggered him to do it, or was he just that kind of guy? Like him?
I'd have to say that's just the guy he was. Obviously, Rowe was the only medic in Easy Company that made it from D-Day to Hitler's Eagle's Nest. So, and he joined right after Toccoa and Camp McCall. So, he's been there with the men almost the whole time, minus Toccoa. So you've got to figure by Bastogne, he's a seasoned trooper. He's a seasoned medic. These are his guys that he's responsible for. And I think he felt a personal dedication to those guys. I'd like to think that's who he was, because I'd like to think that's who I am. And the job that there's no question that when it's time to run toward danger, that's who I am. And I think I've got a bit of Rowe DNA in me that makes me who I am. So I think that's who he was.
What an amazing answer. And Chris, what was the feeling you had when you watched the episode of the series, The Band of Brothers, for the first time?
That's an interesting question, because I had a very negative view of episode 6. That scene where Shane's in the foxhole and he hesitates for a few seconds. They're calling medic, and he doesn't move. And I think it's Lipton who finally comes up to him and taps him on the shoulder and says, "Let's go, Doc." And he jumps up and goes. Well, I thought they're portraying him as a coward. And of course, back then, 20 years ago, we didn't have the internet like we have now. We had bulletin boards for the kids that maybe don't even know what that is. But I jumped online afterward and I'm looking and everybody's like, love the episode and love Doc Rowe. And it was all positive. I thought, maybe I'm just too close since it's my family. And then when I watched it the second time, it really clicked that it's really a genius moment because it shows the humanness of that man in that situation. Yeah, I'm sure he was scared to death. Every man should have been scared to death. But he got himself together, got himself composed, and he jumped up and did his job regardless. So the fact that he, for 5 seconds, as they portrayed it, hesitated, I think just was the genius in showing the reality of what these guys dealt with.
Yeah.
And the bravery to get up and go and do it anyway.
Yeah. Right.
It's amazing. Now, you're not just, because you've been back to the battlefields a couple of times, Chris, like retracing the steps of your grandfather. You've been to Normandy, you've been to Holland. Yeah, you've been to Holland. That's where you always catch a cold.
Right.
And then you've been to Bastogne a couple of times. But that's not all you do, because you also try to educate people and children about the greatest generation, and you do it by using your grandfather's company as an example. So you're not actually promoting E Company, but using the legacy of E Company. You made a book about this, using the legacy of E Company to inspire and teach children about the greatest generation. Can you tell a little bit about the book?
Yeah, and really the genesis of that was the guys that we were losing when Compton and Winters and Garnier and Heffron and Malarkey, when we lost those guys, not only were we losing some of the core members of that company, but we were losing guys who spoke to schools. They went physically to schools and talked to kids. And I thought, we're just losing that ability to reach kids. And so that was really what got me thinking, let's find a way to do it. And so that's where the book started. And obviously, I make the joke that sometimes Annika drew a book and I attached some words to it because everyone loves her artwork so much.
Yeah, because I don't know if you can see it, Chris, but we're actually showing the book.
Annika, yeah.
And Annika Helleman, who made the illustrations. It's been translated into Dutch and into French. Did you do it yourself, or how's your French, by the way? Because you live in that Cajun part of the U.S. So how do you pronounce? What's the French title of the book?
You've got me on that because my parlez-vous français is not much more than parlez-vous.
Almost,
français.
very, very close. Almost perfect, Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So it is available for people in the U.S. by sending on Amazon.com. For those who would like to purchase a signed copy, signed by Chris in the US, docrograndson@gmail.com. For the people in the EU, that's the web link at the bottom right where you can find the books, signed copies. The other ones you can find on Amazon. So, George,
I'll say real quick when you talk translation, French, German, and Dutch. German was last year, was the latest copy. I'll tell you. Okay. The passion of people associated with this, all of my translators translated for free.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing.
That's the testament to people not only loving the men of Easy Company and the story and all of our World War II veterans, but wanting to continue that legacy that people would volunteer their time, many hours, to translate that book and reach more people. So it's a testament to the people on this podcast right now and others that are really to remember it, guys.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going, Chris, because I'm going to let you go in a couple of minutes because you got to get back to work, writing tickets.
That's
right. Because a lot of people are getting away with it right now. So George, I have a quote. I have a quote here as well, and this is a little write-up by David Kenyon Webster. He in one of the accounts he says, literally he starts with the company comedian Bliff Portuguese named Luz, who was then playing Bazooka Man, trotted down from company headquarters, ran out behind a post opposite of the enemy hose, and, laughing and shouting, shot 3 rounds into the basements, stimulating the occupants and permanently opening the shutters. So, the company comedian.
Yeah, he certainly was. reading Webster's book, for anybody who's had, Webster was a terrific writer. And when I was watching the series, they were in Haguenau, and that one was titled The Undesirable Neighbor. And that's why they went there. It was a building that was nearby. Yeah. And watching the series was, I think my dad was handing out candy bars and cigarettes. And I think Cobb made some comment about, hey, Luz, what are you doing? You're keeping that stuff for your rear echelon. And then I can't say what he said, but something about your rear echelon, something or others. Yeah. And he kind of got frustrated, and he looked at Webster and said, Webster, take this box. We've got to go blast the building. And I was kind of hoping that they were going to show that, because the descriptive nature of it was really quite good in the book. And this just another illustration of my father and how crazy he was. And that was one of the things that that when in Webster's books especially, you know, there's this one quote. He said, Luz was in his element, reckless and crazy. Yeah. So noisy and reckless.
Yeah,
so
kind of sums it up, huh?
Yeah, he was the company comedian, and so he got a lot of mileage out of that. I guess he kept everybody loose as well.
Yeah, so that brings me to, of course, I think a lot of people want to know, because you have that scene in episode, is it 1? I think it's in episode 1 or 2 when he's in Ep 1 when you have the exercise with Sobel, and he does this imitation of Major Horton, who was on leave that day. Now, is that a true story?
Yes, it is. It is. You know, it's quite funny. That's one of the stories I remember growing up seeing, and you know, him talking about. And so, yeah, that was a true story. And the interesting thing was, you know, Chris and I had met Sobel's son, Michael. Okay. He came to the 2003 reunion, I think it was, Chris. Yep. 2003. And so he came to the reunion. It was really great because we were able to hear him tell the stories about his dad, and learn things about his dad that we didn't know. We only knew what HBO showed us. And but him and I had kind of a good laugh, because I was surprised that his father, Sobel, you know, didn't turn things over to find out who in the world embarrassed him like that. So but yeah, so that was a funny story, a great story, and we laugh to it to this day.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And the crazy thing. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead, George.
No. Just one other thing. You know, one time I was touring. You know, I toured with Stephen Ambrose Historical Tours and Chris Anderson, and you know, we were in Margraten and paying, going to all of the graves and stuff like that, and I'm kind of the advanced guy. I run to this grave, and then people all show up, and I go,
oh yeah, that's Horton is there.
Yeah, and Major Horton was there. So yeah, it was kind of funny the very first time that I stumbled on that. I looked and said, oh wow, wait, look at this, Major Horton. So.
Chris, I have a closing question for Chris and George. Chris, first for you, how there are a lot of people watching now on Facebook, and how important is it to remember those events? Also, the sacrifices of the 101st Airborne Division, but also all the soldiers that fought in the Second World War.
You know, it's unbelievable. You know, you give me goosebumps, Joel. You know, the lessons that these guys have left for us are so powerful and resonate these 70 years later, and are very applicable to the world we live in today. You know, we have still got to be on guard for countries and people who are willing to divide us based on religions and skin colors and things like that. You know, that's evil still exists in this world, and we can easily forget that. But we can also remember the perseverance and the coming together that so many nations and millions of people did. But these guys, you know, and especially for the Americans who left their country, you know, it was different for the Europeans. That's their home. You know, you fight for your home. That's not a question. That's a given. But especially for the Americans, that they would give up back in a world of no internet. You know, you have a globe and a piece of paper that shows you where Bastogne is, but you have no pictures of it. You have no internet, and you're a country boy from the middle of Nebraska, and you sign up and say, I'm willing to go fight and protect other people's rights and freedoms in their lives. Mm-hmm. It's just a powerful story. Some of them did not come home. Some of them came home missing arms and legs and eyes. and some of them drank for what they saw and endured years of post-traumatic stress syndrome. So those stories are all powerful testimony to the human ability to be bigger than themselves and fight for something bigger than themselves and sacrifice for something bigger than themselves and for strangers. And so the lessons are still very true to this day. Europe celebrates freedom to this day because of it. And that's a powerful statement. Not every country, not every continent can celebrate freedom like Europe does. And that's a testament to these guys.
Okay, absolutely. Well, thank you very much for sharing that, Chris. George, I had one more. I wanted to ask about Muck and Pocala, but we're really running out of time right now, so I have to skip that question if you don't mind, because George prepared a little testimony. Or can you just read can you do it in 1 minute?
I can do it in 1 minute. Okay.
Because your dad was a witness to the death of Muck and Pocala in Bastogne that I mentioned him, and he wrote a little piece about it. It's a bit longer, but George's going to do it like really quick.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. The weather was cold, very cold, no food. Ground was frozen. After pulling out a few outposts and New Year's night patrol, an attack on Foy took place. My job was taking the prisoners back to Bastogne. After we moved up to a different position, it was late in the afternoon. We started to dig in. I was told to go back to battalion and get some big shovels. By the time I got back, it was dark. What took place was unbelievable. Muck and Pocala had dug a big hole 6 by 6, 2 feet deep. Not having a hole, they asked me if I would mind sharing theirs. Being a thick-headed Portuguese, I refused. I finally dug a slit trench 6 foot by 1 foot. Then came the artillery shells falling all around. One fell mighty close. As daylight came, someone asked to wake up Muck and Pocala. I looked in the hole and saw nothing but dirt. I jumped in the hole, started digging with my hands, and I felt their sleeping bags and pulled them both up. They were dead. They had taken a direct hit. I'll always thank God for my thick head. And that's the decisions that are made during battle and life or death situations. He could have easily gone into that foxhole, but he didn't.
Oh, amazing.
And the amazing thing, too, is that we have been able to connect with people like Muck and Pocala's family.
Okay.
Over the years, we met a lot of them. Right. A lot of the soldiers that didn't make it, we've had a chance to reconnect with them, and it's a pretty touching thing.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, George. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate that you made the time to be here with us. Chris, I can't thank you enough for all you did. Yeah. And thanks for being here with us, sharing your stories about your grandfather, George. Thank you very much. We have some more guests in the waiting room.
Yes.
We'll bring them on shortly after.
Our video, we have a short video about Bill Gagne and Babe are going in a documentary visiting Bastogne. And after this video, we will be back with some actors of the Band of Brothers. So stay tuned, and we have a short break.
You were one of the few guys that got to meet their character, right? I know that Jimmy Medio was really close with Frank Proconti. Yes. You got to meet Shifty Powers too. How was your relation with him?
Oh, it was wonderful. He's, he was such a really welcoming, generous, beautiful person. And his family, Dorothy and Margot and Margot's husband and Wayne, and all their family is just so welcoming, so lovely. And they're from a place called Clinchco in Virginia, and it was about an hour from where my mother's from. So it's very close. We it felt very familiar, being around him. He was a very, very generous person.
Yeah, and actually, you did you spend some time with him at his place?
Yes, I visited him a couple of times before this. Well, I visited him once before the series, before we filmed the series, and then afterwards I visited him and stayed. I would just go and stay with him, and he talks about it, how he would have adopted me, but I ate too much. So
yeah. So did he like the way how you played him?
Yes, I believe so. I think it's challenging for for these guys. to watch the film, to watch the movie, the series, and just kind of, you know, it was so profound and it affected them so much that for at least Shifty, he was always, you know, there were certain things that bothered him and certain things he really loved and appreciated. You know, things that I think his third platoon was not as heavily featured, and I think that was something that was very important. Obviously, he was in third platoon, but yeah, there's you know, I think that he and his family, I think they were very happy about, you know, what I was able to do. I think that it's always a challenge between, you know, with trying to represent these guys with as much, you know, with as much truth and authenticity and respect for them, and at the same time, you know, play your character and make a Hollywood, you know, miniseries that's enjoyable. And I think that there's a fine line there, and it's sometimes I think that they got it right, but you know, there's often you know, areas. I remember you know, there was a scene in Bastogne. It was episode 6. I was basically you know, they wanted me to sing in a foxhole. Like, dude, there was a certain scene, a few scenes actually, and I was like, well, Shifty, that's not where he was, and he wouldn't have been with those guys, and he definitely wasn't singing. He talked about how it was so horrifying, you know, and you know, the whole experience, you know, was so horrific for him. And I, you know, that he basically, I thought, well, I went and spoke about it, spoke to the, you know, the production team, and I was like, listen, you know, Shifty wouldn't have done that, and he wouldn't have been with those guys. And I ended up not being in that episode at all, apart from once, I think just one scene. But beyond that, yeah, I was basically unable to be in that.
Wow. Hey, Peter, how much do you eat? How much do you eat that Shifty Powers didn't have enough ammunition to feed you?
Yeah, that's something that I think that basically I don't know how much I ate, but I was for some reason, I think it was the cocktails that got him. We used to sit out on his porch and drink cocktails, and I think I was drinking too many of his cocktails.
That's the truth. He drank too much booze. He didn't care about the food, did it?
Matthew, a question for you. How was it for you to play in the series and also a real character?
Well, yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I've spoken about this before. I was cast very late, so I was always playing catch up. And the first, so we did boot camp, and then we almost kind of like filmed boot camp. Do you know what I mean? That the first episode's like we just filmed what we just did. I don't really know what I was doing until about episode 3, and it was just before the beginning of episode 3 where I meet Blythe, and I really had no clue which way I was going to do it. I was just kind of wandering around like a soldier. And then suddenly Joe Hobbs gave me a flip phone and said, "It's Tab's brother." And I was like, what? And so I'm finally talking to the brother of the guy that I'm playing. And as somebody who has an older brother who rags on me all the time, who I kind of look up to, it was very weird listening to somebody's younger brother talking about their hero. Do you know what I mean? And if you look at the start of that first episode where I find Blythe, I've got this kind of like look on my eyes, like a deer in the headlights. And it's because I've been completely knocked off center by just talking to Tap's brother. So I hope that answers that question. Yeah. And then I just kind of like clawed my way through from there.
Yeah. I just want to, thanks for that. I just want to interrupt you a little bit because I just got a notification. There's somebody who wants to join the conversation right now.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask the technician, Martijn, what's going on?
Yeah, he's coming now.
Oh, he's coming. It's on his way. So I'm so happy that he could make it.
Video, but,
so anyway, Tim, good to see you because you straight from work, straight into the Zoom session. Thank you that you had time, that you made time to join us. as you said, your character, you were in like almost every ep until Bastogne. Well, and that's when suddenly the shell hit Monk and Pancala. So that's where kind of your part ended. So have you ever been in touch with the Pancala family? Oh, there he is. Ashley Taylor, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody. Hey.
Hello, Shane. Welcome. Welcome to. Yeah, we're having a chat with Pete, with Matt, and with Tim.
Yes.
Right.
So, well, good. Thanks for joining in for a couple of minutes.
Yeah. Hey, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, you just missed Chris and Luz. So,
well, you've had the juice. You've had the juice.
Yeah, we kind of had it. I was just talking to Tim, and I kind of asked him if he ever got to meet any of the family members of Pancala. Oh, there's another one.
Yes, there's another one. Yeah.
Ross McCall, welcome to the meeting.
Welcome.
Welcome. So I got to explain it. Sorry, Tim. I'm going to get right back to you. We got Shane Taylor, Doc Rowe. We got Mr. Ross McCall.
Yeah.
Hey.
Welcome, Ross.
What do we got? We got Penky. We got Shifty. We got Tab.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if Ross has his audio on.
I don't think.
He's saving his voice.
Oh, he's saving his voice.
He's now on mute, so I will ask him to unmute. Okay.
Oh, yeah. So Tim, did you ever get to meet him?
No. No, basically. There was some contact from sort of extended family in recent, like in the last 2 or 3 years, a bit of email contact, which was lovely. And they have actually updated, I think, his biography on Wikipedia with a bit more information that they have. I haven't actually spoken to them for reason, but there wasn't a lot of info around then, and there was nobody I could contact. So
how did you prepare for the part?
I just went to boot camp. That was it, really.
Okay. So I guess most of you guys were at boot camp. I know, Matt, you were cast right the day before boot camp, right? Something like
about 4 days before.
Or about 4 days.
Okay.
Peter, you were at the boot. Ross, can you hear me? Yeah, but we still can't hear you. Well, Shay, you were. I was. We just talked about to Chris about his grandfather and what a special man he was.
Yes.
Was that part just offered to you? Of Dr.
Are you what you mean, like a straight offer?
Yeah, like hey, choose. Like, okay, we got this character. This is for you. That's for you. Ross, did they say like, hey, this is lead god. It's gonna be you. You're gonna be lead god.
Yeah. Nope.
You're gonna be Pancala, or was this sort of a selection, extra second edition, third edition? How did it go?
I'm not sure if anybody had a straight offer. I don't think so. I think everybody had to do the same thing. Everybody had several auditions, and we were given. A lot of people, I don't know what it's about the rest of the fellas, but I remember getting a speech from Spears. Now I think Matthew was already cast, but we were given that just so they could. It was a good monologue, it was that monologue he has to Blythe, episode 3, I think, or something. And then they would start to triage out who they thought might fit some of the other roles. I mean, we didn't know what any of them looked like, or, we didn't know who we might be close to. But that happened pretty quickly with them sorting stuff out. I remember Roe came fairly early for me, and that stuck. I still read for a few other things, but that one stuck. And it certainly stuck on me because once it was there, I really, really liked that idea. And,
Was there anyone you read for that you just thought, this isn't me? Or you just like, I'm desperate to be?
I can't remember. I don't know why the Spears, that speech he had about, you just got to accept the fact you're already dead. I just remember that because it was such a powerful speech. That's the one I remember that stuck out the most. There may have been a Nixon, one of his speeches, but I can't remember. But there were a few of them I remember.
Yeah. How about you, Peter? Were you cast how did you become Shifty Powers? How did it go with the cast, the audition?
They had interesting enough, they gave us a few different parts to, or he gave me a few different parts to read, but they had some recordings. I think there was recordings of Shifty. Was it recordings or? I think it was recordings. Somehow I got some recordings to listen to, and was able to, go in and basically do my best to mimic his accent and the tone of his voice, and that's basically, I think, what was what got me the part was I could, it was kind of familiar to me.
Not the fact that you could handle a rifle or that you were like a good marksman or anything like that.
No. I think
You must have been cast late too, because we just done film together.
I know. Yes,
we all remember that.
Yes.
I know you do.
Hey Ross, we can hear you now.
Yeah. Good. I'm glad. I just reinstalled Zoom, so maybe this will.
It's amazing to have Joe Lieb got here. Of course, Joe passed away somewhere in the early 90s, so I think you weren't unable to meet him or do your research based on his character, who he was. So how did you get prepared for the part of Liebgott? Because he's being portrayed as being Jewish. Well, actually, he was like born Jewish, but I think he was raised Roman Catholic. So that's probably not all the info that they gave you. But how did you get the part, and how did you prepare for the role?
I literally got given a manila envelope with one picture. That was the extent of the research that we had on Joe. So it was more about, I would lean into, I really wanted to figure out a little more of his religion, to be honest, and the fact that he spoke German. So those were the two things that I leaned in on. Being raised a Catholic, I had a vast knowledge of that side of things, but I didn't have much knowledge on the Jewish side of things. So, American, Jewish, speaking German, there was a lot to figure out, but that was half the fun.
Yeah, well, it was great because for many of you guys, you were it's 20 years, guys, since I think 2001 was the American premiere, right?
Yeah.
So that's 20 years. So the shooting was like 21, 22 years ago.
21 shooter, yeah. I started when I was 8. I think I was.
Oh,
you stopped playing little Joe Liebgott.
Shane, I have a question for you, but I think for all of you. When the series was produced, did you already have a feeling of this can be a big hit?
Well, you only have a sense of the scale of what you're involved with. Whether it works or not, you can never tell that. But I think. And the fellas might remember this, but we had, and I'd never had this before, we had like a pre-shoot drinks thing. And this was along a stretch of London, like it was called Pall Mall. And they hired out these houses. And they just had this, what seemed like never-ending food and drink, meet and greet, all this kind of stuff. And just in that moment alone, I just thought, yeah, this is going to have a bit of money behind it. And of course, when we got to the point of getting to the set and walking around the set, and you're literally walking around mainland Europe, it was just, a lot of the Saving Private Ryan stuff was still up, a lot of the same crew, I think. And you just knew that, everything was there for you to kind of immerse and do your best work. They really looked after us. We were in a complete bubble, so that the external blocks of it being a Spielberg, Hanks and thing, you could actually sort of block that out a little bit because you were into your character. Most of us went to boot camp, so we were really into it, and those other distractions didn't really come into it. So you could do the work, but whether it you can.
I think the moment that I totally understood what Shane's saying there was that night at Pall Mall, and the fact that we all got lifelong memberships, and I still go there now and have drinks every Friday or Saturday night, and it's all part of that membership program that they gave. You guys remember, right? It's nice, right?
Yeah.
I never went. I went to my friend's Fringe theatre production instead.
You idiot.
How did that show go? How did that show go, Matt? Is it still running?
It's still running, Ross. Yeah, mate.
And what are the because we a lot of people also that are watching now on Facebook, they saw the series many times. And what are the funny moments of when the series was produced?
Well, careful there, mate.
I think one of the funniest moments was seeing Matt's friends Fringe Theatre play become the huge Broadway hit that it's become. I mean, legally fun.
It wasn't called Hamilton at the time, but it is.
Yeah. Where because another question what people ask, like, where was it filmed? Where was it? Like the Bastogne part, you're in the woods with a lot of snow. Can anyone explain, like Peter or Ross or Tim? The shooting of the episode on Bastogne, the scenes inside of the woods in the Bois Jacques. How did it go? Because it wasn't really outside, was it?
No, it was in a former aircraft hangar. I think it was owned by British Aerospace previously, and they filled it with soil and something like 300 live trees. Is that right, guys?
Yeah.
And then they had
305.
Yeah.
And then they had filled it obviously with lots of fake snow. So there was a lot of, I think, like paper snow on the ground, I seem to remember. And then they had lots of those snow machines.
So somebody told me, I think it was James Madio who years ago told me that they froze down the entire hangar. It was like really cold inside.
I don't remember that. It was fucking.
You don't
baking.
remember that?
I mean, I think they tried to do that, but I think the first couple of days, the system, whatever system they had, broke, and it was never really fixed.
I think what James is referring to is he used to bring ice packs and stuff them down his trousers just to get into that feeling. He's very method, James.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Because that's the thing, and that was the chief problem. That was the chief problem with doing that episode. You kind of had to, one of the big notes was to remember the cold. Because obviously
remember James Bowles, yeah.
I remember exactly. So it was so hot for me. It was so hot. I mean,
as well, James Bowles. I mean,
can you separate me? Like,
we're back at boot camp already. But I think that was the thing. It was just under the lights, in that uniform, running around. It was the hottest place to film. We've all filmed elsewhere in the world, hotter places. But I've never been in an environment which was so damn hot that you had to be fanned. You had to be wiped of sweat before or after every take. And of course, you're trying to depict somewhere that was just, it was like hell is frozen.
And that's why Shane should have won the Golden Globe for that episode alone, because of that cold acting. It was incredible. I'm taking the piss, but I'm also being really serious. It's like, it was. Everybody thinks that was outside in the in the Belgian winter.
Yeah, we did a Zoom event. Me, Shane, and Lucy. And we got David Leland on, and apparently David Leland's got a picture of like him in a thong and a crop top. Who's shivering like that because he's so hot.
Yeah. So Matt, can you tell a little bit more about that project you're doing now? It's called We Happy Few 506.
Yeah, I'm getting the boys on one at a time, or two at a time, or three at a time. We had Shane and Lucy on, and David Leland on. And then we had Dexter. Ross, I'm coming to you. I've got a really great idea for you, and I don't want you to jump the gun. We had Mark Warren Blythe, we had Dexter, and we had Rick Warden on the last one. We got Cudlitz on to do. We're going to have an episode 4 special, and it's kind of ticketed so you buy into it. And it's more of this type of thing that McCall and us are doing now. Is kind of a lot of fun. Do you know what I mean? And we do get some historians on. We get some of the family guys on, but it's quick fire banter, and you see what raconteurs and great fun these guys are. And that's just what we're doing. So if you go to We Happy Few 506. FB page or online, you can check out what we've been doing. It's not recorded, it's not streamed, it's just live. So we ticketed, and I'll pay the guys for their time, and it's you got to be there. It's like Studio 54. Okay, Ross, I've got a great one for you, mate, but I'm holding it up.
I want to go back to Peter for a second, because you've been in Band of Brothers, but it goes much further than that. The history, like war history. I think you were also in the Lost Battalion.
No.
So wrong research then.
He was lost.
He was lost. There was another battalion. Okay, that was.
I think
He was in a lost battalion.
I think Ali, George Khalil, Ali was in it.
Okay, he was in it. But Peter, I want to ask you. I want to ask you a little bit about this guy. I'm going to show it now. His guy is First Lieutenant Robert Bryce.
Yeah. Yes. He was my grandfather's cousin, and he was in the 2nd Ranger Battalion, and he fought on D-Day and died. He was killed.
Near Pointe Hoc.
Yes.
Yeah, so 2nd Ranger Battalion near Pointe Hoc on D-Day, because many people keep talking about these guys who get killed or die heroically on the battlefields or on the Normandy beaches, Bastogne, Market Garden, but there are people who actually never made it to the battlefield, who actually never got there. And one of these guys was your grandfather's cousin, First Lieutenant Robert Bryce. Because if you read what happened to him on D-Day, I got a quote here saying, the first platoon boat dropped its ramp and the men started ashore. Lieutenant Robert Bryce of the 1st Platoon of Company B was killed as he signaled his men forward.
Yes.
So I believe never got out of the landing craft or
yeah, I believe his last words were "Let's go" or something like that.
Yeah, because he jumped off the landing craft ahead of his platoon. He then motioned the others and said, "Let's go." That's when he was cut down by machine gun fire. Be assured that Bob died a heroic death. He was in front leading his men, a ranger all the way, and he now rests in honored glory.
Yes. Thank you for that.
Yeah, so that's amazing. It's for people also have to remember these guys, because they died for our freedom as well. Even they have never made it to the actual battlefield or were unable to take part in the liberation of the continent. But he is like one of the many who actually got killed on D-Day, like before reaching the Normandy beaches.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome. Well, thanks for that, for letting us share that story.
Yes,
because it's very, very, very moving. Thank you very much.
And that's one thing, I think we all were constantly thinking about when we were doing the pretend version, is you had to remind yourself that, in reality, a lot the men were doing this kind of thing. It was scary enough just running around squibbed pieces of earth that were exploding, but were never going to hurt us. But to think that those guys in places like Bastogne or on the Normandy beaches, were doing it for real.
You have most of you. I'm not sure about you, Peter, but most of you, the other guys like Ross, Tim, Shane, Matthew, you have done these cast reunions in Normandy. Shane, you were there in Bastogne as well. So you have been to the actual battlefields. Matthew, you do it when you were with the tours with the museum. So what was it like? Because you've been playing this on the set, but being there on these grounds for the first time, can you remember what?
Well, I think for and I may be speaking out of turn, who knows? But for me, it was I didn't visit any of these places until a good 15 years or so after the show, and I guess removing myself as from being an actor from the show and been able to watch the show as an audience member and to go into these places that were essentially sacred ground 15, 20 years later was probably more rewarding for me now because, we've all gone off on our collective careers and we're all shooting other movies and being in other worlds. But to come back to Band of Brothers and see where, don't forget, we knew a lot of these men. They became friends of ours. The ones that had survived and the ones that, they became our drinking buddies. And so to hang out with them on a social aspect, then you have the show, which is, a Hollywood production. And then you have the reality and actually being in the forests or being in the towns. It really did, I guess as an adult, take a second, because you remove yourself as being an actor in a show and you go, oh my God, these men actually went through this thing. And I found it really, educational, slightly, I was slightly liberated by it. I was emotional. I know Shane and I, we walked through the foy, where it all went down, and I remember just you and I just having that moment there going, man, this is incredible that 20 years ago we thought we knew what this was. And I guess we did in some way, but we didn't really know. And so to step in the footsteps of these fine men 20 odd years later, as some of us are fathers, married, we all have, everyone has their own life now. To go and see that from a mature perspective was really sort of enlightening and wonderful in many ways, as well as being sad, but really eye up.
Yeah. Now there's one person who has visited the battlefields also, but not 15 years after the battle, after Band of Brothers came out, but like 76, 77 years ago when the battle broke out. And that's going to be one of our guests. So I would love to have you guys on right now, because we're going to talk to Mr. Al Blaney. And Al Blaney served the 326 Medical Company of the 101st Airborne Division in Bastogne. So waiting for Martijn. Oh, there he is.
There he is. Hey, sir.
Hello to you.
Hello, Mr. Blaney.
Hello.
Oh, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're in good companion with Andrew Biggio, who was our guest on our previous stream. Do you recognize any of the guys here that you see on the screen?
20 years ago, Reg.
Yeah.
I could see
I don't recognize any of us.
And in 2009, I was on the tour, and I saw the people there that.
Yeah, I guess.
Wow. Yeah, all kind of people there. So you have been back to Bastogne, sir?
Yes, I've been back to Bastogne. Almost 2 years now for the 75th anniversary.
Okay, for the 75th anniversary. Now, that's where some of you guys were there as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Blaney, you were in the 101st Airborne Division, is that correct?
Right.
Yeah, 326th Medical Company.
Right.
Okay. So at the beginning of this show, I did a short presentation, and I did mention Crossroad X, the field hospital of the 326th in Bastogne.
Do you remember Crossroad X, where we drive?
Oh yeah, I remember the Crossroad.
So that field hospital was overrun by the Germans, like 116 Panzer Group. And many of the guys were killed, wounded, or taken prisoner and sent to Germany. So where were you? Were you in that field when the attack happened?
Where were you when the hospital got overrun?
When the run, I was coming from Bastogne out to where that was, and as I got about halfway, another ambulance came from the hospital and told me, don't go bother to go out, it's gone.
Yeah.
He was out trying to pick up casualties, making the U-turn back to the hospital where another ambulance stopped him halfway and said, don't even bother, it's gone.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So you were lucky that you weren't at the field at that moment, right?
You're lucky.
Yeah, very lucky.
Yeah. So so what happened then? Because the hospital that you were working at, you were a medic, so you were collecting the wounded, bringing them to the hospital, but now the hospital wasn't there anymore. I know that General McAuliffe then set up a new hospital at the seminary school in the chapel right there. So, but what did you do after the hospital was gone?
I stayed in Bastogne and drove an ambulance most of the time.
Oh, you drove it. But why did you drive an ambulance? Because it was nice and warm?
No, they just asked me to do it because they had an ambulance empty.
Okay. So you treated a lot of the wounded guys.
Right.
Yeah. So here's a guy who actually played like treating a lot of wounded guys in the series Band of Brothers. Shay, do you have a question for the real medic?
I do.
That's who that was Doc Rowe from Easy Company. He played Doc Rowe from Band of Brothers.
Hey, Mr. Blaney.
Hi.
I have a question, and the question is, how did you become a medic? Did they pick you specifically? Did you want to be a medic? How did that pan out?
No, basic training. Done, give us medic. No questions at all. It was just forced on me.
Right.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
So no question. You didn't have a say. You didn't have a say about it. No.
No. I have a question.
No.
What I think is awesome about him is what you don't hear. Well, I don't run into a lot of guys. They made him. He went to England as a medic, and then he went to jump school while in England.
That's neat. That's neat.
And how important how do you think about these events after 75, 80 years? Is it still important to remember? Can you ask him that?
What's it like to remember those events 75 and 80 years later? Is it still important to keep the memory alive?
When I went there for the 75th, brought a lot of things back to me, and which I hadn't had done before.
So the last
Yeah.
one we did in 2019 brought a lot of memories back to him specifically, and then Reg, when you were showing the images of Foy, and there was an ambulance in the picture, I mean, he nearly jumped out of the chair pointing at that ambulance in Foy.
Yeah. So
it was a time.
Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, just to thank you for asking me. That's all.
Well, it's because of you that we're all here, because we're telling the stories now. Joel's a storyteller. He guides stories. I'm a storyteller. I tell stories on the battlefield. The other guys you see here, like Peter, Ross, Shane, and Matthew, they are fantastic storytellers. They make much more money by telling stories than I do, because they're brilliant storytellers. But we all do it for the same thing, to pass on your story and you and your buddies to the future generations.
And I think that's the important thing.
After that, I went back and enlisted and stayed in for 20 years.
You stayed in for 20 years?
So
right.
And were you always a medic?
No. The last I was in data processing in the for the wing. In the Air Force.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. No, when I went to try to go in, they saw my health cab, saw that I had meningitis. Spinal meningitis. So they said, no more jumping for you.
So sir, have you watched the show Band of Brothers? Have you watched the Bastogne episodes?
Did you watch the television series Band of Brothers?
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Did you like it, or do you think that these guys did like a rather crappy job actually?
No, I thought it was well done, and
But you wonder why they have a British accent now, and they didn't have that 20 years ago.
I would still see it again, and I would have the memory about it.
Oh yeah, because you were there. You were there for real. You know, you were not on the set.
I just want to jump in, and I just want to say thank you for your service, sir. It was
absolutely.
We bowed down to you. Without you, we don't have a show. So thank you for everything you did.
Yeah.
Also, I'd like to ask what your moisturizing regimen is, because you look amazing.
He says you look good for your age.
I use Kiehl's, Matt. I use Kiel. Oh, not me.
You finally given me your secret.
Sorry. Sorry.
Well, a week ago from today, I had my 96th birthday.
Oh, wow.
2 years older than Rob.
Sometimes you
Amazing.
get waving around.
Waving around.
Wave them around, sir. Wave them around.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
very neat.
And you guys, another question. Peter, you have a question for Mr. Blaney?
Where are you from?
Where are you from?
Huh?
Where are you from? Tell them where you're from.
Well, right now I live in Natick, Mass, but originally I was from Canada.
Oh, really?
And when I became 18, I went to the people and told them I wanted to go in the next bunch. So on the 23rd of May, 1943, I took the oath of earth.
Wow.
And I was
Wow.
in Mass, working in Mass then.
Oh. Kind of.
You know, it was, I felt now that the military was a good good for everybody. Because
So
I
you
felt, made a man of me.
Yeah. So you would do it all again?
Would you do it again?
Would you do it again?
Yes.
Okay. And what is on your T-shirt, sir? Bastogne, I think.
Welcome.
Where did you guys get those T-shirts? I'm confused. I don't know where they came from.
Well, I made mine myself, so it's somewhere on the World War Media web store, and I don't know, Mr. Blaney. I think did you take it from a POW?
Oh dear.
You treated the POWs. You treated the Germans, right?
Oh yeah.
They came marching in.
Yeah, sure.
Mr. Blaney, Mr. Blaney,
the Germans just as well.
You were saying he took care of the German.
Just as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I see it's like 10 past 10 right now, so we've been going for 2 hours. First of all, Mr. Blaney, Andy, Bijo, thank you so much for setting this up. Mr. Blaney, it was really an honor of having you here with us today. Hopefully, when this whole COVID thing is over, we'll see you next year in Bastogne to celebrate your 97th.
Yes, hopefully you can travel again. And I will thank you, Andrew. The last live stream we had, you see the rifle in the background. More about this project, the rifle, you can see in our last live stream, or visit this amazing project, an amazing Facebook page, the rifle, because it's a really special story. Thank you, Andrew, for setting it up.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. Thank you, man.
Andrew.
I have to. I do have to say, Reg. I think it's interesting these Zoom calls because it gives us a little light into everybody's lives. I mean, Shane looks like he's in the attic of his house with like the haunted baby crib next to him. Matthew Leitch looks like he's got like a murder chalk line around him. Like I think something's going on here. I got Shifty, who looks like he's in a convent now. I don't know what's going on with Shift. Reg, you've got Bastogne pointing in your head, and I'm in some weird Japanese restaurant with a kimono hanging by.
You just ordered octopus, yeah.
Yeah, it's all about it.
Yeah, it's all put in a different perspective, Ross, when you do it this way.
It really is, and I've no idea where Joel is. I mean, he just looks like he's the most normal out of all of us.
He's being held captured by Canadians.
Some Canadians.
I think.
Apparently, he's been locked in a museum in Bastogne.
I know. I'm locked up in Groningen, in the northern part of the Netherlands. That's
the dog swallowed the key.
Listen.
He has to wait till it comes out again.
If you just turned the camera slightly to the right, you'd see something very similar in Matt Leitch's room, but he won't turn the camera. He will not turn it.
This is it.
It might be a different gender.
Oh, that's another dummy you got there, Matt.
What? It's the art dog. What? What are you talking about?
Okay, guys. But anyway,
I want to think.
You can stay online and chat a little bit more, but we've got to say we're going to end this thing. I want to. Peter Youngblood Hills, thank you so much for being with us. Nice chat with you. Matt Leitch, I wish you all the best with your golden fingers, which is your version of the Oscar, I guess, that you will once get.
Yeah.
Good luck with your happy few 5 or 6 with all the calls. People can buy tickets for the events.
Maybe we can put it online.
Matt's is setting up stuff like this with great topics, all with the cast members and producers and writers of the show. So get your ticket, go online. Shane, thanks. I know how busy you are for dropping by and being with us for this short time. Ross McCall, it's a pleasure always, because I know you because I looked you up on and you were in like all these big series that I liked so much. You know, I love 24. I like Castle. You were in what was Luther, all these kind of things. So it's amazing, Band of Brothers. Well, thank you so much for taking the time being here. We had one more guest scheduled. He was online in the waiting room for about 20 minutes. And by the time we wanted to bring him into the Zoom, we lost the connection because apparently there's a storm alarm over his place. He lives out in the middle of nowhere. But we had Mr. Brad Freeman here, one of the 2 only living Easy Company veterans, was supposed to join us, but something went wrong very, very, very last minute.
Well, so maybe next time, Reg, we're going to
maybe next time we can bring it in. But then again, keep up the good work. Thanks again for being here, for being with us, guys. Thank you very much. And
I'm going to say goodnight, but I am going to say to the 3 fellas here, Shane, Peter, Matt, if you want to stick around for a second, stick around. I don't know if we have to hang up. Do we have to hang up?
No.
I'm not recording, right, Reg?
Martijn is the technician, so
okay.
Don't record it. It's going to get graphic.
Martijn, can you tell us? Let us know if we're still on.
Oh, it's off. It's off. I think we're off, mate. There's no rec sign in the top right-hand corner.
You've been doing this before.